I have for you possibly the strangest 2 minutes of television that has occurred in a very long time. Of course, it happened on Tucker Carlson. And there's this guy who joins him named Joe Bastardi. And Joe Bastardi is the meteorologist who will go and give kind of the anti-man-made climate change talking points. Meaning, he'll use his meteorologist kind of credibility to then turn around and deny the science around climate change and be kind of a hero to those who really don't want to accept that humans are playing a part, a very significant part in the climate change we're experiencing, and that's why we have to change our actions to prevent certain ramifications of that climate change. Well, he went on Tucker Carlson's show and tried to figure out what on earth he's even trying to say here. A random tangent about multiple things I couldn't even really decipher, and then it'll conclude in him just making a normal kind of anti-science talking point about climate change, and Tucker Carlson agrees, of course, but they're talking about Pete Buttigieg and maybe the hypocrisy of him flying on a private jet whenever he says that he cares about climate change, and of course private jets are really bad for the climate. And even Tucker Carlson, someone who brings on a lot of bonkers people, at certain points during this 2-minute clip I'm about to show you, seemed deeply confused, as you're about to be. Take a look.
Well, I don't know. I've been giving this a lot of thought today because I had to drive from Iowa City all the way to Pittsburgh. And when I went by South Bend, oddly enough, it hit me. There are three possibilities here, in my opinion, just looking at this, okay? First is they've all got climate vaccines. We don't know about them, but unlike the COVID vaccine, they actually work. So whatever they do, they're immune from it. So that's a possibility. That's a long shot. The second, Tucker, is that if bad weather stops air travel, it stops car travel. If you can cause more bad weather, right, then guess what? Everybody can't drive. For instance, next week and the week after,
look at Tucker's face. What's going on?
Watch how much bad weather comes into the United States. It's going to be the coldest, snowiest period around the Christmas time since 2000. So we're going to see planes and trains and all these other things.
We'll continue it, but I know he's probably, trying to tell a joke. He's saying it could be this thing or this thing, and the first two will be outrageous, and then the third one is the actual point he wants to make. But number one, the examples he's giving are just incoherent. But then also, Tucker is not responding like he gets that it's a joke, and is staring like he's staring into the face of the devil.
Shut down. So if you just dump all this CO2 in the atmosphere and your assumption is, hey, CO2 causes bad weather, if I can cause more bad weather, then guess what? Other people won't be able to fly, will have less CO2 emissions. Or the third possibility, exactly what you said. It's a phony climate war. It's fraudulent. You could tell back when we talked back in July, we were talking about it's going to get cold early this year across the United States. That has nothing to do with CO2. What it has to do is the natural cycles of the weather. And what's happened is these people have taken advantage of people who fall prey to this, and this is what they're doing. There's no logic or reason for it except they are trying to establish a caste system that destroys the greatest experiment in freedom and individuality, which is this country right here in the United States.
Of course. I mean, if you really believe that carbon was a pollutant, you would be planting pine and spruce and hemlock and evergreens across the country, but they're cutting them down to make way for highways and dollar stores. So it tells you they're frauds.
So that's the argument that we were building to? Just denying that CO2 contributes to climate change whenever we have way too much carbon emissions? Is that really the argument that we're landing on with that strange series of thoughts? Or those strange, very, very weird. So here's what's a little bit off-putting to me. I honestly didn't realize, and I cover politics, I didn't realize that people like Tucker, and maybe it's because I just don't tune into his full show often enough, and I'm just seeing particular viral moments, is still denying climate change in this way. I know that they deny it's something we should care about, but I thought they kind of shifted and said, whatever, it's just not that big of a deal, and fossil fuels are too good to give up or whatever. But no, they're still just putting their hand over their eyes and putting their fingers in their ears and going blah, 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 to all of the facts and science behind, I guess in this case, specifically carbon emissions and that effect on climate change. Very, very strange. I'm a little bit sad that so many people, very sad, tune in. I mean, Tucker's the most watched cable news host, and think that that is logic or that is presenting facts. Bringing on some meteorologist who is just completely disconnected from reality and completely anti-fact and anti-science, and believing that that's reasonable and that's where you should get your information. It's very scary.